My name is Ash Johnson. I came out as bisexual when I was 16, and then as transgender a year later when I was 17. I think the scariest thing about it was having to ask myself, will my parents disown me if I tell them who I am? And I think that's something that cis straight people don't realise because they've never had to ask themselves that question. But the majority of LGBT people will have had to ask themselves, and that's just really painful. I was lucky. My mum never had a problem with me being bi, and while it took some time, she's now very supportive of my transition. Unfortunately, my dad died before I came out, so when it comes to him, I will never actually know the answer. I can reassure myself that he loved me, but the fact is, I will never know how he would have reacted to my gender and sexuality, and I will never know if he'd accept me as his son, and that will hang over me for the rest of my life. I see people saying that it's annoying when LGBT people shape our whole personality around our identities, or shove it down their throats, whatever that means. But when you spend so long hiding from yourself and pretending to be something you're not, when you get the chance to be yourself, you kind of just want to do it as loudly as possible. I think people do need to consider that when the world is trying to silence us, sometimes we have to shout to be heard. My first real experience with transphobia was the first time I used the men's toilets. I walked out of the cubicle and over to the sinks to wash my hands, and there was a group of lads gathered by the sink near the door. They noticed me and started whispering, and I just did my best to ignore them, but when I tried to leave, they blocked the door and wouldn't let me. They started saying stuff like, "What are you?" and calling me a he-she. And they were really crowding against me, so I had to make the choice between waiting for them to get bored and let me out, hoping they didn't decide to hurt me, or shoving through them and hoping they didn't hurt me. So either way, I felt like I was just waiting for them to start hitting me. I eventually decided to shove through, and luckily they just laughed and let me go. But that encounter has never left my mind. It took another 2 years for me to use the men's room after that. I just avoid using public toilets at all cost, which put me at high risk of kidney disease. And if I really had to go, I'd either use the accessible toilets or the women's room, but I'd often get dirty looks there and in there as well. I got my initial referral to the Gender Identity Clinic when I turned 18 in July 2014. That was my first step to going on hormones and eventually getting surgery. I knew the waiting list was long, so I didn't think much of the fact that I hadn't heard anything. But mid-2017, 3 years later, I started to get antsy. I called up and was told that they had no record of me on the system. So either my referral had never gone through or had been lost, and I was back to square one. I had to be referred again and go back to the bottom of the list. After another year of waiting, I decided to go private. I was lucky enough to be able to afford it, but a lot of trans people don't have that privilege and are left waiting years and years to be able to start hormones. Recently, it was revealed that the UK government are taking steps to roll back trans healthcare. There will allegedly be a crackdown on doctors who diagnose gender dysphoria, making vital care even less accessible. Across the pond, Trump has rolled back healthcare protections to allow doctors to refuse to treat transgender patients in any medical situation. For me, pride represents freedom. It's an escape from all the situations I've just talked about. It's the ability to celebrate such a vital part of myself that society wants me to hate. It's a celebration of love and sex and identity, and it means everything to me. It took me a while, but I can now proudly say that I am a bisexual transgender man, and I'm not going anywhere.